This is Grow with the Bros, hosted by Ryan and Ken Parsons, founders of the Brothers at Just Two Gutters. Welcome to another episode of Franchise Friday. We made every mistake in the book so you don't have to. Our time to evolve as business owners is now. Let's grow together. All right, so on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about fear and why it may be holding you back. All right, so I don't know. How do we define fear? Ken, what do you think of when the definition of fear?
I don't know. There's different ones. Fear can be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. And I think the way it's portrayed in the media, especially with the circumstances that are going on worldwide right now, fear is typically used as a bad thing. There's some acronyms and things I've heard, like false evidence appearing real. I think that's something that a lot of people, we all struggle with fear. It's just a matter of, I think one of the, another way to define it, somebody wrote, fear, forget everything and run. And sometimes advice, right? If a woolly mammoth was to appear out of nowhere and start chasing you, it'd probably be a good idea to run.
I would imagine.
But also fear can mean face everything and rise. And
I like that one.
That one was pretty cool. I Googled that, by the way. That's not mine. And I think that's pretty much, how I would define it. There's a lot of other definitions too that come to mind too, that fear, when you're looking at the bad sense of it, it paralyzes you.
Yeah.
It leads to, it just can cripple somebody. And I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen to myself. So, those are some of the definitions. What are some of the definitions that come to your mind when it comes to fear?
Well, the first one was like the paralyzing thing, like exactly what you said. And I'm like thinking of like, I don't know, horror movies and stuff where like the guy jumps out and he's chasing someone and they just completely freeze up and they're just like, I can't move. And then they're a goner in the movie. So I'm like thinking like fear is paralyzing for sure. And then sometimes we can get things going in our head, like you said earlier, where it's not really the reality. The fear that we're having is not reality. And then other times, like you're getting chased by a bear, you run, you drop everything, nothing matters at that time. So I'm looking at fear, but if we're talking in the business sense, I'm definitely looking at it like you're afraid to do something. You're just afraid to move forward. You have these ideas or you want to do something, maybe it's even starting a business or doing something in your business, but fear can be completely paralyzing. And one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is paralysis by analysis. So, so you get afraid. So then what you do is now, all right, let me research this for the next 10 years of why I should not do what I'm supposed to do. And a lot of people just get paralyzed to do anything because just by analyzing too long.
Yeah. So that kind of fear only sees the downside in any given situation. So, a lot of people focus on that, where fear also can be turned into something that could be, it can have an upside to it. I guess it's creating a habit when you're feeling fear of facing it head on. We start justifying things and we start making excuses, which we talked about on our last couple podcasts ago. And it leads into that kind of a path where we end up taking those false readings that we have in our head. And if we stay there too long, it keeps us from being able to, reach our fullest potential. So that's what fear looks like to me, is especially in business, is, fear can be anything that keeps me from progressing forward to achieving and attaining and success.
No, it's good. And so I was thinking about fear, and if you're using that like horror movie example, and like you're so afraid you don't move, and then you know you get killed in this movie. So
Yeah.
the appropriate response to fear is action. You know, you
Right.
can't stay still. You can't not do something, because then it's going to overcome you. That fear, it will overcome you. I feel like if there's a equal and opposite reaction to fear, it's action. You have to run or make a move or do something. You have to do something to get through that fear and over that fear. And I think that as I look at what we've accomplished and done, it's exactly that. There was so much to be afraid of. And I look back on it, and I don't know if we were smart enough to be afraid. As some of the stuff we did, that might be an understatement, but some of the stuff we did, we just did. It was scary. There were a lot of things that we did, but I can't remember ever having fear grip us that we didn't really want to go forward. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, there were a few fearful times. But you mentioned right in the beginning, there's definitely been things that you've been afraid of in the past. What were you thinking about right there when you said that?
Um, let's see. It's tough because I always confront fear head on, so it's tough
Yeah.
to like pinpoint something. Um, it was definitely, I guess, a fearful time when I made a transition from leaving a career as a teacher to, going into the gutter business. That was probably, that's a long time ago, but I'm sure there was some fear and some feelings of fear doing that. There's certainly, I think fear sometimes is brought on by from outside sources too.
Exactly.
And I think there was a lot of fear there where you have a lot of people that only see life and things in a certain way, and then they try to broadcast that onto you.
Mm-hmm.
And in those moments right there, you can let fear paralyze you into taking on their thoughts and their ideas, or you can just be like, you know what? I don't really give a crap what anybody else says. I'm going to do it. And that's my mentality. That's always been my mentality since I was a little kid, that I really didn't care what other people said. I always, just would, once I made up my mind to do something, I was going to figure it out,
Yeah.
and do it. So,
You're so right about the other people thing. I just had like the funniest memory that like when we'd go to school, my mom would say, "Don't go in the woods when you're at school. Someone might steal you." Like that was her fear. And then she's telling me, a little kid, and I'm on the playground and I'm just looking at the woods thinking there's somebody in there ready to steal me, you know?
I
So
remember that.
like, do you remember that?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. I hope my mom listens to this one. I mean, like
Yeah.
all the amounts of things that she was afraid of. And I know she was trying to protect us ultimately. And these were good things. These were, good things that you should be conscious of. But you're right. Like, that's the kind of like the small funny stuff. But when it gets into big life decisions, like, hey, I'm going to start a business. And then someone's like, you're out of your mind. 85% of businesses fail. Why don't you just go get a job? Or you're like, I love doing this. And they're like, well, you can't make a career doing that. You need to go get a safe job. Like, so I think people, like you said, I think most of our fears are somebody else's fears that we end up owning and not conquering.
Right. And really, the way that you conquer it is having boldness.
Yeah.
Is the boldness to go out and do it and not take on those opinions and make them real. And a lot of people, it goes back to that acronym: false evidence appearing. Was it? Yeah,
Real.
false evidence appearing real. And it really has to do with education too. Education is a big way that I've used to overcome and get past fear myself.
Yeah. So it's amazing how many people that I know that over time share something like they've always wanted to start their own business. They wish they did, or they'd always want to do something, whether it was, making a cookie recipe that they have or doing something on their own. I think most people think or want that in their mind, but I believe fear is what stops most people.
It's fear of, am I going to be able to succeed? Or fear that, am I going to be able, how fast is it going to take me to replace my income if I stop doing this job that I've had, or this career that I've had, and now I don't, I'm looking for a change, but how do I get over to here and become a business owner? And what if that doesn't work out? And what if I can't pay my bills? And all these what ifs start happening, and all this fear starts clouding our minds. So yeah, it can be very tough when it comes to going, because I really think that most people that I've talked to and people that I know that are either employed or even self-employed, they all have pictured being in business for themselves. I don't know too many people that have not gone down the path in their head, wonder what it would be like if I owned my own business. But then the fear comes, right? The fear is there to say, well, you can't do that because this and this is going to happen, or it could happen, or whatever, and then people just retreat back into what it is that maybe they're not totally fulfilled and passionate about. And that's a shame, because and that goes back to fear is paralyzing. And that's why I think that's one of the biggest reasons is fear keeps people from pulling the trigger from owning their own business. But my thought on that is, why not? What's the worst that can happen? If you're going to work hard, if you're going to have a good plan, if you're going to have a good partnership or whatever, or if you have a good structure of support of people that are success in business that you can glean from, there's certainly enough books out there about business and how to be successful at it. And if you're fulfilling something that is a need through a product and service like we are, what's there to be fearful about? If you're hungry and passionate, you're going to be successful. Yeah. Is it going to be tough? Sure. Everything's tough.
Yeah. I think you just can't be afraid to lose stuff. At the end of the day, if we've got to downsize our home, or if we've got to take 2 steps back, as it looks like from the outside in, and say, you know what, I'm going to downsize. I want to be able to start my own business, and the house I have is a little bit too much for me for that. So you know what? I'm going to go sell my house, and I'm going to go rent for a couple of years, and we're going to, live like no one else right now, so that we could build something that I'm passionate about. I think once you're not afraid to change your life, or afraid of what could happen if it's not successful, then it's easy. Then you're stepping into it. And what's great about when you start and you do something like that, failure is not an option. And I think if some people are soft, some people cannot stomach it, and not soft, they're risk adverse. They're going to play it safe. But if you're not going to put the time in, I think most people and most businesses fail because they're unwilling to work as hard as it really takes to get something off the ground.
They have a false sense of what it takes to be successful. Some people think they can just open up a business and it's going to be simple. Yeah, sure, it's going to be simple, especially if you're buying something that already has a proven track record, but it isn't going to be easy, especially a startup. Startup means you got to start that sucker up. You got to get people, and that's a big fear that we see that people have as business owners, right? As business owners, people have the fear of, I don't know if I could open my own business. I'm not really that great with people, or, oh man, how am I going to get people? Right? That's a big deal today. How do you guys find workers? It seems like it's almost impossible, but yeah, it is. If you think that, right? If your thoughts in your head think that it's impossible, it's right.
So I think there's a fine line between all right, if you want to start your own business, it's about doing a little bit of research, don't get paralysis by analysis. But if you want to do something, once you know you want to do it, it's not like if, it's like how. Okay, I want to start a landscape business. I want to start a gutter business. Now it's about how. All right, how do I do it? Can I do it this way? How do I get the money, and how hard am I going to work? So I think you have to pass through that fear with action pretty quickly. And I heard something years ago that if you've got 70% of the information, you already have too much to make a decision. And I think people are always trying to have every little duck in a row, every little last piece of their life perfect. We see it when people are thinking about getting married or having kids. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather wait until we're making a little bit more money, or until we're here, or maybe when we move. Like, there's never a perfect time for anything.
No, and that's what fear does to us. It doesn't allow us to think things through, right? It doesn't allow
Yeah.
us to think things through. It makes us react in the here and the now. And the way that you conquer fear is by getting more and more information, which builds up your confidence.
So we see a lot of business owners that want to own a business or even a franchise, and sometimes they're asking the wrong questions. And the fearful questions are things like, well, can you guarantee? Actually, I remember this for a salesperson. He was like, can you guarantee me 85,000 a year? I'm like, I can't guarantee you that, because how good can you sell? I know you can make that if you can sell a certain amount. He's like, yeah, but you know what? I need that to be guaranteed. And it's like, all right, well, that's too much fear. Like, if
Right.
you had too much fear to accept this role because you're looking for guarantees. And I think people are looking for that in business too. I need these guarantees.
Today, are in general, the general population is looking for guarantees when it comes to everything in life. When it guarantees for their health, guarantees for their, whatever that they're doing, jobs, their career, like that salesman. We've seen that, but somebody that's making, can you guarantee, can you guarantee me that your franchise is going to be that I can be successful? It's like, no, you can guarantee it for yourself.
If you can guarantee me that you're going to work your tail off and do whatever it takes, yes, I can make that guarantee. But I think on either end, you can't really make guarantees like that. And I think you're not ready for business ownership. If that's the kinds of questions that you're asking or need, then, you probably don't have what it takes to become a business owner.
Well, either that or they didn't have enough information, because the more information that you educate yourself, especially if you're heading down a path of wanting to do something, people will figure out what they want in life. They'll figure it out. And if you're passionate about something and hungry for it, you're going to figure it out. Yep. And that's what success looks like. But success is not an easy road. It's not a road that's, it's rocky, it's narrow, it's tough. And a lot of people aren't willing to go through the process that they need to do internally to themselves to get them to a place that they can make a good educated decision. And that's it. When the more information you have and the more that you learn about something, whatever it is that you want to do, whatever business it is, the more confidence you're going to have. And that confidence is what's going to help you to overcome the fear. When I started in this business, man, I was told that I wasn't going to be successful. I know it from many people. And there's many stories like that out there. But I didn't let the naysayers and their lies, I did not accept that. And, nobody thought that a gutter company could have more than one truck or two trucks. Yeah. Nobody thought that you could have a partner in this business. Nobody thought that you could have multiple trucks. Oh, don't do that. I tried that once. There were so many things thrown at us that, I looked at it and it was just like, I don't care what these people say. I'm going to figure it out. And it took a long time. It took over a decade for us to franchise this thing and put all the systems together. And then people said on top of that, even though we proved the model, it's like they're still saying, man, the only way you were able to franchise that thing is because of technology, the technology today. So,
yeah, I remember once we franchised, someone put on Facebook, oh, good luck franchising a gutter business. I'm like, all right, I need that motivation. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's it. Fear, you can let it grip you or it can motivate you. And that's what I think I've always chosen as, when I face fear, I get motivated to conquer it. And it's become a habit at this point in my life, being a middle-aged man. When I see fear, I face head on. I don't let it manifest or fester. And I think that's something that's important.
I think like what you just said, like fear, in the beginning, it's paralyzing, but then I think as fear hits you, the more you've conquered fear, the more it's just like this small hurdle. The more it's almost, fear almost becomes a challenge. The more you get over your fear, the more you don't see it as fear. It's just another challenge. I really think that's how it goes. You got to just keep beating fear, and then there is no more fear.
It's like the comic books, Batman in the Batcave when he was a kid and he fell down in the well and all those bats, and he had this huge fear of bats, and he embraced it and became Batman. I mean, that's what we have to do, people, to be successful, and we have to become our own Batman. Whatever it is that you're facing that's giving you that fear, hit it head on and take action, and boom, you'll be a superhero.
Nice. Thanks for being my Robin.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about fear and owning a business and getting into business. Let's talk a little bit about the franchising. There are some myths around it. There are some fears around it. What are some of the myths that when people are thinking about being a business owner and then they want to buy a franchise? What's some of the fears there?
One of the biggest ones, and even I had this before I even knew anything about franchising, is why would I give all that money to them? But you know what I did instead? I hired you, and then you bought it into the company, and I ended up giving you 50%.
That's right. Best decision you ever made.
But it's when franchising. The reason why there's a lot of myths around it is because we're not educating people. People aren't learning about business, especially in schools, right?
Yeah.
If schools aren't teaching about business, and they have home and careers.
Yeah.
They have a whole room dedicated to that, and guidance counselors that are pushing all these careers, but they're not talking about, hey, what about opening up your own business? What does that look like? So, people have this fear of the unknown, right? And I think that when people have fear of franchising, it really stems really directly from them not having a really good understanding and education about really what franchising is. And franchising is a business strategy.
So, I mean, I remember I was an adult, probably married, maybe, I don't know when, but I always thought that McDonald's owned all the McDonald's. Like, I didn't realize. So one of the myths in franchising is we think that there are these big bad corporations that own every single one of them, and they're just sucking money out of the communities, and they're all going to some headquarters. I thought Dunkin' Donuts, I knew Subway was a franchise. I knew Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's. I didn't really realize that there was a lot of franchises outside of food. So one of the things for me, I was an adult. We might have been talking about franchising by the time I really learned what it was. I always assumed that if you went to McDonald's, that you were taking away from the local burger joint. I didn't realize that every franchise, and I don't want to say every, but I think pretty much every franchise is owned by some local family that employs local people. And what they're doing is they're paying royalties for a system that somebody else figured out. So if there's 100% of the money that's made, maybe anywhere from 5 to maybe 15% goes to corporate to then continue to supply them and help them build the business. That to me was a huge myth in my mind that I never thought to ask anything deeper. I just assumed that franchises were owned by these big giant corporations.
Right. No, and that's it. Franchises are owned by local people who hire local people to stimulate that local market and bring a product and service to the people. And what's great about franchising is that typically when it's done that way, no matter where you go in the country and deal with that franchise, you're dealing with local people, but you're also dealing with a process and a system that you can expect the same result every time.
Yeah.
And that's important, especially in service-based businesses. When you deal with different types of contractors and stuff, they all beat to their own drum. And having something that gives you the same result every time in the same interaction and the same customer service and the same products and materials, there's a lot that goes into that. But that's that's stuff that's really meaningful to people, because it's not just about products and services, but it's about the experience too that you're providing for those customers throughout your market that you're in as well.
And we've seen both sides of that. On the customer side, we've had actually we've had like between franchisees and customers, but on the customer end, we've had people say, "Are you a franchise?" And we have gotten in the habit of saying, "That's an interesting question. Why do you ask?"
Right.
And we've had people say things like, "Well, I'm just in case something doesn't go well. I love the idea that there's somebody above that, or there's somebody that I can go up the chain if this experience doesn't go well." And then we've also had the flip side of that coin where people don't understand it. And they're like, well, if you're a franchise, I'd rather go with a local company. It's like, okay, well, what's more local than the person that's lived here all their life that now is doing gutters in your community? And what's crazy is we primarily compete with owner operators. And an owner operator, it's one owner and one helper. What's really interesting about our model and most franchise models is day one, they typically have 4 employees. So they're already doing more in the economy, and they're spending more money, and they're generating more money locally and spending more money. And typically a lot of franchises also have a community aspect where they really encourage you to be involved in your community, to sponsor events. So right out the gate, if you're thinking, well, I'm going to hire a franchise company versus, a local guy, I would say 98% of the time that person is the local guy that owns the franchise.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. So let's talk about a little bit about the fears. Okay, so now you've got somebody who wants it, and we've been talking a lot about fear.
I have another
Sure.
myth too, going a little bit deeper on the whole, well, you got to pay them all this money. As you're going to pay that money anyway. When you start up your business and you have to try and figure out all those things, and I'm on forums on Facebook and stuff, and guys are asking all these like basic questions. Well, how much do you charge, and how do you find guys, and how do you set this up, and what program do you use for that? And they're asking all these questions, and all these guys are just trying all these different things, and it's a big mess of all different types of things. And there's no continuity in that. There's no and there's no real answers for them. And I almost feel bad for them, because when I look at them, I see myself, because I know what it was like to be that guy that was trying to figure it out all myself and spent most of my career doing that. And it's tough. Life is short. How do I shortcut that? I gotta hire somebody to do the accounting and the QuickBooks. I gotta hire somebody to answer the phones. And if I don't, I'm answering the phones. If I gotta do the estimate, the bid, I gotta go out and produce the work. I gotta do all these things. And, after a while, it's daunting. And you start missing tons of opportunities and reviews and all these things. So, I'm spending all this money. All this money is going somewhere. It's not going all in my pocket, even though I'm staying small and thinking I'm taking as much as I can by keeping my overhead or whatever. But I'll guarantee you that if you're following your numbers on your cost of goods and after material and labor is done, and you look at your overhead, you're going to see that, man, that website was expensive. There's no way I can afford to do that one, right? So you try and build your own on the side on whatever time you think you have, and it becomes daunting. And, when you're signing up for a franchise, and to talk about the cost of that, they're typically, once you're done with the territory fee of buying your territory, which doesn't go into some franchisor's pocket, and they're going living on a beach on their private island somewhere, those costs go to making the franchise or company that you're partnering up with to be able to pay the employees that they have in that company that are supporting the franchisees to success for the whole life of their business. So there's real costs associated with that business. Being a franchisor has its business. And you know what? After the territory fee is paid, typically most franchisees are paying around 10%.
Yeah.
They make
Hey, their salespeople that.
year, right?
Yeah.
So 10% as opposed to paying a percent over here to the IT guy, a percentage over here to the marketing team, which is usually 5 to 8% if you're doing it yourself. And then you have, licensing, lawyers, you have insurance, you have all these other things that you're paying out and stuff that's going. And I can guarantee you that eventually, when you look back, it's taking way more time to do those things and to try and figure those things out. It's taking more money out of your pocket than you think it is, because if you're not tracking it, I'm telling you, if you're not tracking it, you're never going to know. But I'm going to tell you that you're spending that money somewhere. Why wouldn't I spend it with somebody that could help me to make money faster and be able to get my time back? That's, typically when we're owner, operator, installers, or whatever that we're doing in business, and we started ourselves. So that's one of the big myths that I wanted to debunk, is that people think franchising is super, super expensive. And certainly it is. I mean, there's all different levels of franchising out there and different investment levels. There's ones that go from, $15,000 for a territory fee and maybe 6 to 8% on royalty and a brand fund. And then there's some that are, millions of dollars, because you have to build out a whole restaurant or something. And there's everything in between.
Yeah.
So there's everything, there's something for everyone. So I just wanted to bust that myth of, everybody seems to think that franchising is expensive because they automatically think of, a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts where I'm going to spend $1 million or more for it. And I got to have all this cash in the bank and stuff. So that's not,
the reality is any business is expensive. It's franchising is a little bit front loaded, where you're paying to look like a company that's been around for 20, 30, 50 years. You're paying more up front to have the knowledge, have all that. But when you have your own business and you're trying to scale it, and I think that's the important thing here. I mean, I can only speak for us on the gutter side. It is not worth buying a gutter franchise if you just want to continue to be an owner operator. You have to want to be able to scale it and get to at least 2 to 3 crews for that to be worth the investment of, it's in my opinion, don't buy a franchise to stay small. There's so much built in there for growth and to do all that stuff. So I think over time, if you start a business tomorrow, you're going to have to put all that money into marketing and getting that brand and the awareness, and those years and years of trying and failing at certain items. You're going to way more than pay for what any franchise is wanting up front. You're going to pay tenfold to get to where it could be.
Right.
And the other thing is, a lot of times, and I didn't realize this till we were in it for a little bit, but people look at it, a franchise, one of the myths is like, well, they got all these rules, and they're looking at it rather than standards. So again, if we're going back to like, are you a good fit for franchising? If you look at then it has having rules, then you're probably not a good fit. You're probably more of an entrepreneur that should do stuff on their own. But if you look at it like, wow, they've got systems and standards for everything, such as branding. There's a reason why you can't, put, certain colors in the logo. There's certain reasons why your trucks have to look a certain way. You're dressing a certain way. You have to answer the phones a certain way because it works.
Well, there's a recipe, right?
There's a recipe,
right? If I have a recipe to build, bake a lemon cake, and I have this recipe, but then I start going off the recipe and start throwing other ingredients in there, that's, it's like McDonald's isn't going to start selling hot dogs. That's what Nathan's.
Somebody might look at that like a rule. Well, I just spent $1 million on a McDonald's. If I want to sell hot dogs, I'm going to sell hot dogs. It's like, well, then you should have just started your own burger joint that sells hot dogs.
A hot dog wagon and go push around down in the, down in some city somewhere.
So most franchises do have rules or things. And I would just say this. There are some franchises, they're not all created equal. There are some that make you purchase all their products through them, and then they actually charge you more than you could get in the market. So if you're going to make somebody, I know somebody who owned a pizza franchise years and years ago, and it was frustrating for them because they had to buy the cheese and the dough through them, which was no better than what they could have gotten at Costco or any of those places, but they actually had to pay the franchise more to get it. If in any scenario you're purchasing directly through the franchise, hopefully the franchise is able to get some discounts that even though you have to buy it through them, you're still getting it better than you could get it on the market. So when you're doing the research phase, you do want to make sure that you're not going to feel that way at a certain point that, wow, I've got to buy their cups, but I could buy the same exact cup for less. So there are things to look at within franchising that could determine whether you want to get that one or a different one.
For a lot of people, fear stems from the fear of unknown. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think it just comes down to the researching. It's the unknown, and there's going to always be an unknown. There's no guarantees. You have to be able to just put fear aside and go for it. Sometimes you just got to dive. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done this many times where we've gone cliff jumping, and some of us will just go right up to it and you get that holy crap in your chest. You back up and you just run and jump. And then there's other people that literally stand up there for hours. They almost do it and they can't get themselves to do it, and I really do feel like business is a lot like that. It's scary for everybody, but some people just look at it, assess the situation, go, I ain't going to die. It might hurt, but let's just do it. And then there's other people that fear grips them so much they can't even get off of that cliff.
Well, and that's what fear does to us, right? It tells us to avoid things that we don't have a lot of information about.
Yeah.
And that fear of the unknown is because we don't have a lot of information.
It's true.
When I'm standing at the edge of the cliff and I start letting my mind start to wonder and well, what's down there? Am I going to hit a rock? Or is there a stick there that's going to impale me? And you start thinking of all these things that can happen. What if I belly flop or break my leg or whatever? Is there this monster underneath the water that's going to gobble me up and eat me alive, like Jaws or something?
So I think you're right.
I think a lot of people feel. They feel that way. The unknown there's a lot of uncertainty, but the other flip side of that is taking action to come up with a great plan. You come up with a great plan, and if you don't know how to make a great plan, you find somebody to make a great plan. You don't let that fear stay there. You think about the pros and the cons, right? Mm-hmm. And when I write down the pros and cons of something, then I can really start looking at it from a very logical point of view.
Yeah.
And letting logic start to take over instead of feelings will help me to make a much better decision going forward. And also will help me to ensure that it's successful. Is there going to be bumps in the roads? Of course there is on the road to success. But when I have that kind of approach to it, I can conquer the fear of the unknown by taking a certain approach to it.
Yeah. So I think if we go, there was something about this standing on the cliff and jumping analogy that I think can illustrate this entire thing perfectly. I remember when we were kids, we heard about this place called Hidden Lake. And there was this hidden quarry that had a giant rope swing and a cliff. And we would go on our bikes and we looked for it days at a time, and we finally found it. And I remember how scary it was to be the first one to do this swing into a lake that we've never been to. But what was really interesting is as soon as one of us got up the nerve to do it, the second person was much easier. And I think that's a lot like business. If you're walking up to the cliff and you haven't seen anybody jump, you got to go investigate. Maybe you go into the water first and I've done this. You literally hold your breath and you try and go as down into the water as you can to see how deep. So now you're measuring, if I jump, is it shallow? So you do this assessment and then you go up and you make the decision to jump. And some people don't want to jump first. And I think you and I were the guys that jumped first. We jumped first and we worked it all out and then we got it figured out. And now other people that see us jump over and over and over again can walk up to that cliff and go, well, they keep jumping and they keep getting out of the water fine. And their fear is literally cut in half or even more than half, because when you've seen people do it before you, it's easy to then go do it.
And that's the power of visualization right there. And I learned that early on because I played sports and visualization was a big thing. back then. It still is a big thing. It's a huge reason why we're successful. You got to be able to picture yourself doing it. And when you see somebody else doing that action of swinging on the rope and then jumping off, okay, great. Then another guy gets on there and he even does better. He swings on the rope and he does a freaking backflip like you used to do off of it. And then, other people start doing it. And then some other people are just like, no way, that's not for me. I'm not going up there. But those are the types of conversations we have. And the way that we start to conquer it, fear, is by visualizing ourselves having success. I can do it. I can jump off the swing. And when I do it, it's like, no big deal. The first time is the biggest rush, right? Then it's like
until you go higher in the tree.
Until you go higher in the tree, right? Or you do a bigger, you're at a theme park or whatever. We all have these feelings of, wow, I can't believe I did that. But that's the first step of overcoming fear, is by taking it head on and visualizing yourself being able to do it. Is a big, huge thing there. Once you visualize it, then it's all downhill from there. It's easy.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I love this. The first time you jump off, you might do it off 10 foot, and then you do that over and over again, and then you get bored of it, and then you try and jump from something higher. And I really do believe that's business. As soon as you get over that initial fear and you do it over and over, you're not afraid to jump a little higher. You're not afraid to try and do a backflip, because you're like, I've done this so many times. I know I can probably pull it off. And I believe that the more you conquer fear, the more you can then go and conquer bigger things. But you have to jump the first time.
Absolutely. And that's what business is all about, is you're taking big jumps, and then you're also taking little jumps in between to get there. And it's going to be visual has to do with vision, right? So, your vision. So what do you do when you achieve it? I was talking to Jimmy Olang, one of our franchisees, a couple of weeks ago, and he has achieved everything that he envisioned. He achieved, success. He's got the house. He's got the business is thriving. Everything that he's ever thought of, and even more. And you can read about and hear about Jimmy's story in another podcast that we just did recently. But he's achieved it all. And what happens when you reach that? Now it's time to hit the reset button and say, okay, because that could be fear right there. I've done everything. Now what? What is left now? What am I going to do? I feel kind of lost. This has happened. So that's where I have to hit the reset button on what is visually, what do I see next?
So I just know this. I know when, we've got a lot of peers that are in business. They own painting companies, landscape companies, whatever it is. I know they're always blown away that when they get a look into our model and they go, wait, you're answering the phones and you schedule every estimate, every install, and you guys do all the marketing. You manage the AdWords, you help set the budgets, you email all the clients, like you do all of that. And basically I've just got to go out, find the team and do the work. And I know that's minimizing their end of it, but that's what they say outside looking in for people that have built their own businesses. They're like truly blown away with the biggest stuff that holds owners back from growing their businesses. We're actually handling and doing that for them.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people don't go into business, because people see all the different moving parts that it takes to make a business successful. Now, I don't know anything about marketing, answering phones and doing all that, and then accounting, and especially in our line of work, in a service-based business. A lot of people think, IT, all that stuff. I just want to go to work and put up some gutter, and I'm going to go to the supplier and get some materials, and I'm going to work real hard, and I'm going to do this. And that's as far as I thought when I first started. And, that was simple and easy for a time until I started thinking about my future. And I was looking at other guys that were aging out of our business that had fallen off ladders and are half crippled, and their hands are going numb, which mine already started doing because of the pounding and the grating that it has on your physical body. And being in a service-based business, it's really for a young man's sport, really, or job. So, there were some fears. Like, am I going to do this? Am I going to be able to sustain this for the rest of my life? I'm only going to get fatter and slower and older. And, and who knows, what if something bad happens? What am I going to do? And certainly some bad things have happened over the years that, was a lot more fearful than going into business or growing a business, for sure. So
one of the biggest things that I've learned that we did, and I remember years ago interviewing people that own franchises, from Embroid Me to Verizon, cellular phones to restaurants, you name it, anybody that we knew that owned a franchise, we interviewed. And what was really awesome is that most of them basically said, as long as you support them after training, you'll be a leg up. And a lot of people said that they bought into a franchise for all the benefits of it, but then as soon as they kind of got their package or they were up and set up, they were on their own. It was basically, there was no really continued coaching. They had to figure out how to staff up and scale their own business. And that was one of the things that we knew right away that we weren't going to do. We weren't going to start a franchise until we were able to support our franchisees. And the way we supported them is, this contact center is unbelievable. We answer all the phones. So if you're an owner operator listening to this, and every phone call comes to your cell, and every night you're attached to it, and every time you try and take a day off, that's taken off the plate. We 100% answer every phone call, schedule every estimate. And basically you look on your iPad and you're like, oh, I got 3 estimates tomorrow. How cool. And then as soon as you finish the estimate, it goes right to corporate. So if you do an estimate and you get in your car and they say, you know what, let me think about it. And you get in your car and you go to the next one, they're like, you know what, why am I going to think about it? And they call the office. They have everything in real time. You don't have to bring paperwork back. You don't have to do all that. So that's unbelievably powerful, as well as setting your install schedule. So that's really huge. So that's one of the biggest things that I believe that we offer. But the other thing that we do is the market. So the brand is one thing. We've got this killer brand, the brothers that just do gutters. You guys might have heard the story. We're not going to go into it today, but just the way that came about
you can be the next brother from another mother.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. This brand resonates with people. It's easy to remember. People smile when they read it. If I'm at the store and like, the brothers that just do gutters, oh my gosh, I love that. That's so cute. It creates a reaction immediately. And that's hard to do if you've named your business like ours in the beginning, Waterfall Seamless Gutters. It was a very forgettable name. And a lot of us have forgettable names for our businesses. So the brand name, and plus the imaging, the trucks, all of that is really powerful. But I'll tell you, the marketing is just ridiculous. Having a full-on team that a certified AdWords specialist, and a lot of companies a lot of franchises outsource their AdWords. They basically give it to a company that puts them into a machine, and they just kind of live on the averages. And so everyone puts their money into it and they get okay results. We go into that basically daily and monthly, and we're trying to get the most and always maximizing the dollars for our franchisees. So I think those two things.
Point with that right there is that, back when I was in business, just me, I would have never been able to afford to have an AdWords specialist on. I would have never been able to afford a content writing specialist on board, or a web designer and all that back end things that go into websites and blogging and newsletters. I mean, I would have never had the time to do that, and I would have never done it. So that's very powerful what you're talking about with the marketing. Another thing that's very powerful about the benefits of franchising with us is that it's much more than a call center and doing all those things. That's a big deal. I mean, that's a whole position that I don't have to hire for $30,000, give or take, right, a year, to have somebody answering my phone calls or a receptionist. But also the ongoing support is super important. We have monthly calls on field operations.
So peer groups. So we have everybody that's in the field they get on a call, the field managers, and they get on a field ops call.
Right. And that's not the only call. We have a sales call that's run by a sales rep that has huge success with selling gutter. And we have that once a month. We have a back office admin call. Imagine having a back office admin. She's calling you up, right? Maybe it's your wife. And she says, QuickBooks is just not working right. You're not getting those calls anymore. That person is calling Gabby, who's our back office head of awesomeness, is actually her title, head of awesomeness, and she is awesome. Imagine she's doing a peer group call, and she's also available to the back office admins all the time, every week, any day of the week. She can set up appointments and talk to Gabby about reporting and spreadsheets and all the things that you need to be handed to you to make your business successful. Your back office, not just you having support on a monthly basis, but the rest of your team that you're hiring locally has people that are being supported as well on a monthly basis. We also have a strategic business call that's run by Ryan and Gabby, who by far, when it comes to operations, especially in our business, there's nobody in the country that is better at talking about operations and business strategy when it comes to doing the gutter business than those two on the planet. I can say that confidently. I know that.
Big brother.
And I know that because of the success of the franchisees that they're coaching on that business strategy call on a monthly basis. And then also so we have that set up. So that's something that you're wanting to look at is what is the ongoing support for the life of my business? What does that look like? What is the franchisor giving to us? And I think that's a really big one. Do they have an annual conference where you're bringing all the franchisees together? We just had ours.
Unbelievable conference. Unbelievable, to the point that every time we've talked to franchisees since, they said, could we please at least, it doesn't even have to be a conference. Could we get together at least one or two more times a year just to have all of us together? That feeling, that everything that did, it was such a high. I mean, it was such a high that, we want to do that again. It was awesome.
And what's so awesome about it is it goes back to this old saying, rising tides raise all ships. And that's really comes full circle of the vision that Ryan and I have had for our industry. Our industry doesn't have that. It's just, every man for himself.
Yeah.
And you guys all know what I'm talking about. And I remember being one of those guys just trying to figure it out myself, but we don't have to anymore. No. We have created an environment with people and a culture, which is super important for people to come together and be able to bring gutters from being a one-star industry, the redheaded stepchild of exterior construction, right? We've all been treated like that by contractors. And not all, I'm not saying that all contractors are bad. We do work for awesome.
And not all redheads are bad either.
Not all redheads are bad. But, you guys know what I mean. And just imagine what we could do together by all banding together and supporting one another. And we're big time, more brains, the better. I don't have all the right answers to everything, and neither does Ryan, and neither does the rest of our team. But how awesome is it that we could come under one umbrella, have time, make money, make a difference in the people's lives that are in this, and all those things is what conquers fear, right? Because there's nothing unknown about it. It's all, these are the steps that we need to take. This is the proven track record for success. This has been done by this person and this person and this person and that market and that market and that market. And, I always have somebody to reach out to. And one of the biggest things that I feel is an advantage that Ryan and I have, as far as we kept our corporate location open. We didn't sell it out and go all the way in and just become franchise guys. Ryan and I still have our corporate location in New York, and all of our franchisees come and they get to visit it. They get to see it. They get to benchmark against it. They get to train. We're having this awesome training facility that we're working on. That's going to be like a miniature, neighborhood in this room with every single gutter situation we can think of, so that guys have a place to come and train, and even new people that are coming into the business that don't have any experience too, can learn
Yeah.
about how things go together and product knowledge and all those things. So we're constantly innovating, and we're doing that with people that love and have a passion about this business all across the country. And that's what I love about it, is I love making a difference at a local level in all these different areas, and we're making a difference. So is there anything, Ryan, that you would add to some of the benefits of franchising with us that may have missed?
Yeah, like the one thing that I was actually surprised about, a couple of years ago, I got asked out to lunch from this guy. He owns a franchise. I'm not going to say which one. Saw our success, but very similar. It's in the service trades, and the franchise never taught them how to scale. So we have a cookbook. We figure out how many employees you need, how many people in the to do the gutters, all of the stuff, and how much revenue that should bring you, and how much profit, net profit. We basically cookbook your entire year ahead of time, and then we just have to go. And every month we do a budget versus actual. And so we know that when you have 2 guys and 4 guys and 8 guys and 10 guys, what that's going to look like, what the organizational chart, when do you hire a salesperson? He had none of that. He was basically flying blind with a great product. Don't get me wrong. What they do is really cool, but they weren't teaching their people how to build a business. So they're basically stuck trying to navigate. They bought a franchise and they don't even know how to scale it. And that's what was really eye-opening to us, because we innately wanted to do that. It wasn't like, oh crap, now we got to add that. That was in our DNA, is to do that for and with our franchisees. So I think that's a gigantic benefit, is that forecasting, that knowledge, the benchmarking that we do with our franchisees, that they're able to see, how everybody's doing and how they could do better. So I think I have a lot more little ones, but those are the big ones. And we're excited because that's what we do. And, maybe some other franchises are doing all of that and more. But from what we've found is most of them have a great idea, and they kind of start to fall back on the support. You basically buy in, and some franchises are kind of saying, here's everything, here are the manuals, go out and have fun, where I think we're really doing a great job having them navigate as each level. Because when you start a business, you have 1 truck. In 4 or 5 years, you might have 10 trucks. What you need as a person for when you started to what you have now, we're really big on helping you through that arc and helping you grow yourself. And the last thing, before you say anything else, the last thing is what they have with us is we're always learning. We always are learning, so we always have something more to give them. There's never a point where they've all surpassed us so much in knowledge that we have nothing to give, because we feel like, we have to continue to learn things. We have to continue to change things in our system. We have to simplify the process each month, each year. How do we make it better and easier, and how do we make ourselves better? And in turn, as long as we're investing in ourselves, I think we're able to continue to help grow the people that are coming in. So I think franchising is better for people that have that fear, because I really do. Like I said earlier, I believe it cuts the fear at least in half, because it's like jumping off that cliff. You can see, no matter how big the franchise is, it could be 5 units, it could be 500 units. There's that many people before you that jumped, and now you can look at their success. Did they live? Did they die? And should I do it? So I think that franchising should cut that down so much. And just like in the research phase, it's really hard to research something that you've never done. If you were just like all of a sudden working in IT and you want to start a restaurant, holy cow, what a big shift. And people do it all the time, but you have enough resources at your disposal to make a decision. You have franchisees that you can call up, and they can share their numbers. They can validate whether it's a good opportunity or bad opportunity. So you have all the resources at your fingertips to get enough knowledge to make a decision. And I think jumping into something that's already an established brand, I love the idea that day one, you look like you've been doing it for 20 years. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the part of helping to overcome fear, is that, you're having something that is a proven business model, not just in one location, but in many locations. And having access to those people, being able to talk with them, And as you continue to learn, you go through the down the pathway of finding out, is this a good fit for me? And that's it. So the more comfortable that you become and that you're going down this process and going down this path, whether in looking into business ownership, or if you're already in business and you're tired of banging your head against the wall and it's like, man, I can never get bigger. I take 2 steps forward and I always take more steps backwards, it seems. And, it's frustrating. That's somebody who is in a perfect position to say, all right, I need help. And you know what? We all need help. I need help. Ryan does. But imagine being able to just have people at your fingertips, and not just one person or 2 people, but having a ton of people. And that's such a big deal. Why we kept our corporate location as well is because there's 3 things that there's startup, right? And when you're one guy or have 2 or 3 employees, maybe 4 or 5, and you're in startup, you're starting that thing up every day. And you're paying bills, you're doing this, but maybe there's something inside of you that's saying, the voice that says, man, there's got to be something more than that. Then this is it right here. This is the reason why we kept our business, is because there's 3 phases. There's startup, there's semi-passive, and then there's passive. And where do you want to be? Do you want to be in startup and you like it there? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, being in startup and being a smaller company. But do I want it to be more semi-passive as I get older? Am I planning for the future? Are my kids starting to get older where I can't work from dark till dark anymore? Which I did that. Now they're going to have activities and they're having different things at school, and I don't want to miss that stuff, right? Have I created a business that allows me to be able to do those things? Or does it depend on me having to go home to work to make that money? I have to trade my time to make money because I'm the system. Well, if you're tired of being the system, and you're wanting to grow something that can be semi-passive down the road and eventually passive, like Ryan and I have created for ourselves, that's why we kept New York as the flagship, as the model for our franchisees to follow. And whether it's, obviously our model is not for people to stay in startup. It's to get out of it as soon as possible. Like Ryan said, you look like, a company that's been in for business for 20 years right out the gate. And people like that. It makes them feel comfortable when you show up in a nice clean uniform and a nice brand and they see all the reviews online. All that stuff helps them to overcome their fear, right? Because people have fear when they have contractors coming to their house, and we have to overcome that. So imagine being able to do that behind the power of a brand, and then also being able to take the steps forward for your future and your family's future, to have something that can eventually run itself without you having to be there minimally, very minimally. And we have guys that are in our franchise right now that are seeing and achieving those results, where probably in the past when they first signed up, there was a lot of fear. And it was like, man, should I do this thing? And now when they look back and they wouldn't do anything differently, is such an awesome thing to be able to see people have that kind of success and overcome their fear. And that's it. That's really what we're trying to do. Ryan and I have created that kind of a pipeline type of business. Yeah, it's going to be hard work in the beginning. Yes, you're going to have to learn some things. Yes, you're going to probably have to change yourself internally to get those external results of getting out of startup to semi-passive to passive. But I'm going to tell you this, it is worth it. I wouldn't change it for the world, even though it took me way longer than the average person should. I'm special, as Ryan would say. But, so if that's something that you're feeling and that you want to do, we can help you overcome your fear.
Yeah, that's great. So hopefully you guys all got something out of this today. I think this was awesome. A lot of fear, and hopefully by the end of this podcast, you're ready to go do something, whether it's franchising, whether it's just something small in your life that you've been afraid of. Put this into action. There's some good stuff here. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you will implement at least 1 or 2 nuggets from this episode that will give you the confidence to grow. Subscribe to our podcast to stay updated and grow with the bros.